Now, I have been told that we may have seen some of these slides before, in which case, tell me and I'll try to say something different about them. So, what I really want to do over the next 20 minutes or so is to bring you up to date where we are in the policy world on CCS. It's all very well, this is not bad. It's really good to talk about the technology and thing, but if it's not going to be deployed, we have a problem. So what I really want to do is to take you through, from a policy point of view, the 4 questions that, when I'm not talking to an audience of CCS aficionados, I get asked. And those are 4 questions. One is, do we need it? The second one is, does it work? The third one is, how much does it cost? And the fourth one is, and where do we put it? And my 5th question is, the answers to all those are going to be, I'm going to show you are positive. My 5th question, which is the interesting one, is, why are we doing it? And what do we need to make sure this is deployed at the scale that we need? So, why is it not going? Because I'm doing the wrong thing. Right, just briefly about the Institute. We're a not-for-profit international membership organisation with offices in Washington, Brussels. I'm cheating a bit here. We do have an office in London, but it won't be open for a couple of months. Beijing and Tokyo, headquartered in Melbourne, and we have staff in Oslo and in Calgary. What makes us different from most institutes is that we have both governments and industry as members, together with small companies, research bodies and NGOs. So we're not a lobby organisation. We believe and we work through advocacy with the objective of accelerating the deployment of commercial viability of CCS, but we do that through advocacy and not lobbying. And we hope to be recognised, I think we are recognised, as the lead CCS body in the world. So let us start with my first question, is do we need it? This is from the IEA's Energy Technology Perspectives, and to me, this is the 2 degrees scenario. There are so many scenarios around at the moment with different figures in them. I get confused, and I'll try not to confuse you. Now, the interesting thing about this scenario, which is 2017, it shows that to get to the 2 degrees in the most economically efficient way, we can get to it in all sorts of other ways, but we really want to do it in the most economically efficient way. 14% of that reduction has to be delivered through carbon capture and storage, which is something like 140 gigatons. And the interesting thing about it is if you look at those two boxes at the bottom, first of all, the majority of that has to be done in non-OECD countries. And then if you look at it again, you say, well, everyone really thinks of CCS as a power industry issue. If you look there, actually, it's nearly 50-50. Industry has to deliver pretty well much the same as the power sector. Now, from a European point of view, I think most people are bought into the idea that the power industry will, by 2050, be nearly totally decarbonised. And that is, there are some issues around how that energy system works, but the 52% takes into account that there are some 2,000 coal-fired plants either under construction or due to be completion in Asia by 2030. So if you just sort of sit in our little European cocoon and say, oh, the power industry is not a problem, we're going to decarbonise, there's a big one out there, and that won't, if that doesn't have CCS on it, it's going to blow a hole in any carbon budget. Looking at it from a different way, looking at where we get those reductions. If you see, looking at industry, the cement industry really is one of the process emissions from the cement industry are one of the big places where we've got to start looking at CCS. Iron and steel, chemicals. beautiful others, which is a load of other stuff, as you can imagine. And then you look at the power industry, CCS on coal power plants and gas, and then eventually we're going to have bioenergy and CCS. So that's really looking at what that 14% means. Another way of looking at it, and this, sorry, I'm going to confuse you now. I was talking about the 2 degrees scenario. That's the Copenhagen Agreement. Everyone thinks the Copenhagen Agreement was a catastrophe. It was the first one that said we have a target of maintaining emissions at 2 degrees below, 2 degrees, I never remember, 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. This is the Paris Agreement, which looks to be below 2 degrees. No one's defined what they mean by below 2 degrees. Someone did say 1.999 would work, because that's significantly below. But this is looking at the below 2 degrees. And you see that 14% for CCS has now become 32%. In other words, the more you increase the ambition, the more CCS you're going to need to get there. And if you look at the other ones, I mean, efficiency is always the holy grail, in my view, of emissions reductions. It's always efficiency, and it goes up to 34%. CCS is not far behind it. But if you look, renewables hardly move, and nuclear is a very small bit. Again, this is getting there in the most economically efficient way. So, that's why we need it. Does it work? Well, there we are, that's what we have. We have some 37 projects worldwide. In fact, we've probably got more now, because I think this is from our November 2017 status report, and there are at least 2 other projects I can think of. No, 3 others I can think of that are in early development or advanced development. The thing to notice here are 2 things. No, 3. First of all, it's basically North America where CCS is being deployed, and that's largely driven by ER. The pipelines that Massimo was talking about were actually originally built to transport the naturally occurring CO2 to the Permian Basin. And fortunately, those pipelines are near industrial facilities who have been able to link in to the network. That is on one of the key issues, the problems that Europe has, is we don't have that network. If you look at the North American pipeline network, and then you put on it all the significant point sources of CO2 emissions, industrial point sources of CO2 emissions, you won't have to build very much more pipelines to be able to connect them all to storage sites. In Europe, we don't have that. We have some shortly to be decommissioned fields in the North Sea with pipelines in place, but they have to be reconverted. So we're actually starting from scratch. If you think about it in terms of the electricity industry, one of the reasons, like we said, one of the advantages renewables have, apart from generous support, is 2 things. They have a network to connect to. CCS project, you've got to build the network. They're also outside the market. If you apply CCS to a power station in Europe, it will be in the market. It will have to compete in the market. So there are 2 disadvantages there. Sorry, that's a diversion. North America, really out front, driven by EOL 12 operating project. China's come from nowhere. China joined the institution about 2014 with no CCS projects. They now have, it's now 2 under construction, but 8 underway, just from nothing. The Chinese have taken a decision that they need CCS for a variety of reasons, one of which is to improve air quality. Europe, well, we have 2 operating and 3 in early development. I'll show you a bit more about Europe later on, because these are large-scale facilities, and the picture is not as big as it looks. Gulf Cooperation Council, they've got 2 operating projects. Again, from nowhere, one in Saudi Arabia and one in the United Arab Emirates, which is on the steel plant, and that's the first one in the world. The rest of the world, which is Australia, Brazil, and South Korea, well, they've got 6. One operating, one under construction. So in total we have 37 projects, let's say 40. What is worrying about that, from a policy point of view, is the pipeline. I talked about wanting to fill the pipeline. What you should normally have is a sort of a pyramid, with at the base all the projects starting up, and at the tip, the projects are actually operating. That pyramid is the other way around. We've got more operating projects and newer projects coming through. And if we're going to actually meet the requirements of the Paris Agreement, we've got to really fill that pipeline and start filling it fairly rapidly. This is a very busy slide. What I'll try to do here is to show you what industries are actually getting, and I'll come on to some costs. We're aware of the industries that are actually using CCS. And 2 things from this. One is, there are only 2 power generation projects in the world. One in Canada and one in Texas. There are a fair number of chemical ones. If you look down the bottom, it's all natural gas processing and hydrogen production. And the blue circles, the circles give you an idea of the quantity. And blue means they've been used for EOR, and green means it's geological storage. And you can see that, to a very large extent, EOR is what's driving CCS. This is quite simple. People want to buy CO2 for EOR. CO2 has a price. One of the ironies is we, in Europe, put in place a cap and trade emissions trading scheme with an object of putting a price on carbon, and it hasn't driven CCS. In the United States, they have a price for carbon, and it's driving CCS. The only thing I'll say about that is, clearly, if you have a price on carbon, you get CCS. So there we are. Some big ones coming out of Gorgon. There is the Norwegian cluster, which I'll come to later. So that's what we've got. Now, one of the questions was always asked is it too expensive? How much does it cost? My first answer to that is it too expensive compared to what? It's too expensive compared to unabated coal. On the other hand, in Europe, no one's going to build on unabated coal. So you have to compare the cost of CCS with other technologies, other low carbon technologies. And if you look at it on a levelized cost approach, it's pretty much in the middle. If you look at it from the power sector point of view, on a total energy system cost, you will find that you can run your systems much more efficiently if you have CCS in there. But what this slide is doing is showing, when you say how much does it cost, it depends what you're looking at. For example, natural gas processing is cheap, as is biomass to ethanol and fertilizer. An ammonia plant actually produces pure CO2, and the steel plant in Abu Dhabi produces pretty well pure CO2. So you don't have to do much capture technology, it's just compression. It gets more expensive, and my friends in the cement industry hate this slide, but they are, on these figures, the most expensive place. As I showed earlier, they're the one place where we need to do CCS urgently. Because if you don't carbonise iron, steel and cement, which after all, if you look at a windmill, what's it built on? Concrete base and steel towers. So if you can't decarbonise steel and cement, you can't decarbonise anything. So I think you've probably seen this slide. This just shows you where the assessment of CCS storage capacity is. And the various shades of green shows how confident we are in those assessments. I think the one takeaway from this is there's plenty of places around the world to store CO2. And if someone says, oh yes, but they're not where the CO2 is produced, I would answer that natural gas is not in places where we use it. And people build tankers to transport it around the world. There's no reason why they couldn't go back with CO2. In fact, there is a project at the moment in Australia. You may know that the Japanese government have decreed that the 22 Olympics, the 20 Olympics will be the hydrogen Olympics. So what have they done? They have struck a deal with the Australian government and the Victorian government, which is a state of Australia, in the Latrobe Valley, which has 800 years worth of lignite. A number of power stations have just closed, and the project will be to turn the lignite into hydrogen, store the CO2 off the east coast of Victoria, and transport the hydrogen to Japan. And Kawasaki are building the boat at this moment. So it's not just an idea, it's actually concrete. So what's going on in Europe? Well, I have a friend who always says, well, back in 2008, the European government said they were going to have 12 CCS plants in Europe operating by 2015. We have 2 operating in Europe, not in the European Union, and they were operating in 1997 anyway. So the answer is that not done very well. But there are things happening, and I'll come to that in a minute. In the UK, I'll come to the Norwegian cool chain concept in a minute, and the T-cycle. The UK clean growth strategy says they want to be able to deploy CCUS at commercial scale by 2030. And they've actually set up a council on cost challenge task force. Now, the Dutch government, when I wrote this slide, this was true. The Dutch government which is a coalition, have an agreement that has a provision to store some 20 million tonnes of CO2 a year. They are now in the process of negotiating the Act of Parliament that will put that in place. And it looks as though the 20 million tonnes was sort of, when they sat down and said, we're going to reduce by 49% by 2030, and they did all their sums and there was 20 million tonnes left over at the end, and they said, okay, we'll do CCS. They've now revisited that, and it will be less. There will still be significant, I mean, if you think in terms of the Sluipen field has stored 20 million tonnes of CO2 since 1997. The Dutch government were saying we're going to store 20 million tonnes a year by 2030. I think at the time we thought that was pleasingly ambitious. They are being slightly less ambitious, but they will still have a significant role for CCS in meeting their climate objectives, both 2030 and 2050. So, these are the planned facilities. These are in an early stage. They've sort of not crept onto my earlier figures, but they will, if you invite me back next year, they will be. So, what do we have? We have the full chain CCS Norwegian project. Ingeborg, are you going to talk about it, or shall I?
Sorry, what's that?
Thank you for listening.
I
Are you going to talk about the Norwegian project? Right. Well, things change. The basic proposal is that in Norway they will have at least 2 projects. One is a waste-to-energy project, and the other one is a cement plant. They will capture, and the CO2 will be taken to the harbour, put on a ship, and then taken. You see where it is full chains. That's Oslo. It will be taken around the coast and be stored offshore. So there are different ways of transporting CO2, and boats is one. And I think it will be shipped down, it will be taken down from the site to the harbour by truck. So the only pipeline is going to be the pipeline from the holding storage site out to the storage site in the North Sea. We have the Caledonia Clean Energy, which is a sort of in Scotland, and that's going to be 3 million tonnes a year. There's a hydrogen project, the Magnum project, which is basically converting an ITCC plant into burning hydrogen. The Irish have got some CGTs and a refinery, and a shortly to be depleted gas field. I'll go even quicker if I can. A depleted gas field off Ireland. Teesside Collective. Teesside is one of the major industrial areas in the United Kingdom with a significant CO2 footprint. It's basically on the site of an old chemical plant, an ICI chemical plant, and the pipework is all in place, and there are storage sites in the North Sea which are accessible and categorised. So that is waiting to go. There are some on the other side which I'll go through. I will just deal with the last one, which is the Rotterdam. Port of Rotterdam has, again, is 20% of the Dutch emissions. The port is offering to build a pipeline. They have a storage site in the North Sea, and they're basically saying, bring your CO2 to the perimeter, we will take it from you. And they're talking about we're taking from you at 30 euros a tonne. Lots of small ones. Interesting thing about the small ones is large number of chemical ones. Lila, Semcap, ECRA, and there's another one I just found out about. So there are about 5, plus the Norwegian one, there are about 5 or 6 pilot plants looking at capture on cement plant. Direct air capture one, and then Cleag geothermal. Those of you who know and love the NER 300, this is funded under the NER 300. As it's geothermal, it's a renewable project, but actually they're capturing the CO2 and re-injecting. So it's also capture and storage. So I'll rapidly wind up. I said one of the things is having, I hope, to convince you beyond all doubt that the CCS is needed, is affordable, and there's no problems with it. That's a very bold statement I just made. But the question is, why isn't it being deployed? And I think this gives you an idea. In the last 5 years, this is 2015, some $2.5 trillion have been invested in clean energy projects. This is not subsidies, this is financial institutions putting money up. About 20 billion has gone into CCS. Why is that? Well, fundamentally, renewables have had a support mechanism, a policy support mechanism has made it investable. People have some idea of how long their money is going to be at risk and what the returns are going to be. Nothing like that has happened at CCS yet, except in North Africa, where EUR has delivered that kind of policy and financeability. So, to recap, we can't decarbonise, we can't meet the Paris Agreement at least costs without CCS. As more projects get underway, we're identifying cost reductions. Those 2 coal-fired plants in North America and also the Quest Hydrogen project in Canada are all saying when they do the next one, the capital costs will be some 25 to 30% less, and the operating costs will also be significantly less. The more you build, the more you understand how to do it cheaper. It's important and it's urgent. The UK wants to deploy CCS at commercial scale by 2030, in the 2030s. They better start doing something now, because it's going to take you 10 years to develop it. Technology is not the issue. and we just need policies that will spur investment, and that's the missing piece. So, I don't like policy parity. What I mean is, you need to have the similar predictability about policy that renewables has had. For CCS, that means enduring policy arrangements, effective and cost-efficient law and regulation. We need to incentivise the discovery of and identification and characterisation of storage sites. Yeah, we need more R&D and hubs and clusters. The majority, picking up Massimo's point about the problem of taking pipelines across countryside in Europe. In fact, most of the CO2 is now emitted from fairly densely packed industrial areas, and you need to build one pipeline that they can all link into. And being in industrial areas, CCS is important because not only to create jobs but also to preserve jobs. So the experience in Humberside, where they were doing some siting, was that the local population recognised that actually pipelines were, and they had, it's an industrial area and it's packed with pipelines, carrying some stuff that's rather nastier than CO2. So there is not quite the same resistance. So there you are. We can't do it without CCS. We need to do it now. And what we need is leadership from both policy and industry to really get the things going. So thank you for your attention.
Probably there are. Anyone?
One more question. Your presentation is so straightforward with the question is, are you always able to convince the politicians because the reason is so openly acceptable? It's not that it's not.
Yeah, well, the last time I made this presentation, particularly on the point about the policy parity, the response of the politician was, yes, but you're not talking about subsidies for fossil fuel, are you? To which I said, well, actually, what's that got to do with CCS? So, yes, there is it's a good point, Sergio. There is a lot of, I've managed to cut away all the negative stuff that you get when you're talking to audiences who are not quite as convinced as this audience is.
Last question.
Do you have a view on what the best financial incentive would be for CCS in Europe in terms of, I think it's going to be agreed that the price on CO2 is going to deliver, do we need a price for CO2 or a CCS obligation, GCCS size?
Well, on the emissions trading scheme, I always try and make the point that the emissions trading scheme is designed to give the price signal to deliver the next commercially available technology. And we're not there yet with CCS. So the carbon price, today's carbon price, even though it is 15 euros, won't drive CCS. On the other hand, the other argument is, when will these plants be coming online in the 2030s? So today's price is irrelevant. It won't drive anything. It's what you think the price is going to be in 2030, and you can extrapolate that from the whole of the mechanics of emissions trading scheme. So if people look at 2030, they might say it will. On the other hand, there are other policy inhibitors around. In the United States, they just used a tax credit scheme. It's called 45Q, which will give you $50 for a ton for every ton of CO2 geologically stored, and $30 for EOR. Now that is, to me, quite an attractive way, because I believe financial ministries don't like giving money away, but they're not too fussed about not taking it, if you see what I mean. Problem is, To do that at the EU scale, that would have to get the 27, 28 member states to agree to do it, because the Commission can't. So one of the things we're doing with the Innovation Fund is saying, you can only give money and you can't give all the money to a project. You can encourage member states in their bit, thinking about doing it through tax credits. I'm from the electricity industry. I spent a lot of time working on the emissions trading scheme, and I have this sort of command and control doesn't go very well. On the other hand, in other words, putting an obligation on. I'm